How could you sell the apartment? I already promised it to my wife. Give me the money from the sale now." Ryan screamed those words at me with a fury I had never seen in his eyes. Megan was crying behind him, clutching her chest as if she were having an attack. But I just took a deep breath and said calmly, "There is a second piece of news you need to hear." As the words left my mouth, I watched my son's face change. First, confusion. Then, fear. Then that tremor in his hands that only appears when someone feels the ground opening up beneath their feet. "But Mom," he began to say, his voice breaking, "my wife and I can't be homeless." And right there, in that exact moment, I knew I had won. Because for years, I was the one who trembled. I was the one who begged. I was the one who lived in fear. But that woman no longer exists. My name is Eleanor. I am 65 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was invisible. Invisible to my son. Invisible to my daughter-in-law. Invisible even to myself. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that my husband and I bought 30 years ago. It was not luxurious. The walls had damp stains in the corners. The kitchen was small and dark. But it was mine. It was the only place in the world where I still existed as something more than a shadow. My husband died 7 years ago. He passed in his sleep, without pain, without goodbyes. And from that day on, my life became a silent routine. I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I would make coffee in the same old coffee maker that made a strange noise. I would sweep the floor. I would look out the window. I would wait. What I was waiting for, not even I knew. Ryan was my only son, my only close relative. After his father died, I thought we would get closer. I thought he would come by more often, that he would call to see how I was, that maybe, just maybe, he would invite me to dinner every once in a while. But no, Ryan had his life. He had Megan. He had his job, his friends, his plans. And I was just a number on his to-do list. A quick call every 2 weeks, a mandatory visit on Christmas. Nothing more. At first, I tried not to feel bad. I told myself it was normal, that children grow up and leave, that I could not be selfish. But loneliness is heavy. It weighs like a stone on your chest that sinks you little by little, so slowly you do not even notice until you can no longer breathe. Ryan's visits were always the same. He would ring the doorbell. He would walk in without smiling. He would sit on the couch with his phone in his hand. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "Fine, son, and you?" "Fine. Busy." And then silence, that awkward silence filled with the sound of his phone notifications. I would offer him coffee. He would say he did not have time. I would ask about Megan. He would answer with monosyllables. I would try to tell him something about my day, about my neighbors, about anything, and he would look at his watch. He always looked at his watch, as if every minute with me was a minute stolen from his real life. But I smiled. I always smiled. Because he was my son. And a mother does not give up. A mother keeps trying, even if it hurts, even if she is invisible. Megan was different. Or at least that is how she seemed at first. When Ryan brought her home for the first time, she smiled a lot. She hugged me. She called me Mom in a sweet voice. She brought me cheap flowers from the grocery store. And I, who was so lonely, so hungry for affection, let myself be fooled. I thought I would finally have someone else in my life, a daughter I never had, someone to talk to. But the flowers withered, and with them, Megan's mask fell too. Slowly, I began to notice the glances. Those quick glances she would cast around the apartment when she thought I was not looking. Glances that evaluated, that calculated, that measured the value of everything. The walls, the furniture, the space. And then I understood. To her, I was not a person. I was an obstacle between her and what she wanted. The humiliations began subtly. So subtle that at first, I thought I was imagining them. One day, Megan arrived with Ryan and said, "Eleanor, this couch is so old, you should replace it." I told her I did not have the money for that. She smiled and said, "Well, when this apartment is ours, the first thing we will do is renovate everything. When it is ours, as if they had already decided, as if my death were just a pending formality. Another time, they were having dinner at my house. I had cooked for hours. I had made the pot roast that Ryan loved as a kid. but Megan barely took a bite and said, "It's a little salty, is not it, Rye?" And my son, my own son, nodded without even looking at me. They left their plates almost full, and I, as always, said nothing. I just cleaned up in silence while they talked about their plans, their dreams, their future, a future where I did not exist. But there was one moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the bathroom when I heard Ryan and Megan arrive. They had not told me they were coming. I heard their voices in the living room, and something in their tone made me stay still. It made me listen. "How much do you think this place is worth?" Megan asked. "I don't know, maybe $250,000, Ryan replied. "With that, we could make a down payment on a real house, a big one." And Megan's voice filled with excitement. "But your mom is not going to sell, right?" Ryan laughed. A dry laugh. "No, but she's not going to live forever. And when that happens, this place is mine. It's all the inheritance I've got." Megan sighed in relief. "Thank God. Because honestly, I don't know how much longer I can pretend to like her." I felt something break inside me. Something that could never be repaired. I stayed in the bathroom, my hand over my mouth, so I would not make a sound. The tears fell on their own, but they were not tears of sadness. It was something deeper. It was the death of an illusion. The illusion that my son loved me, that I mattered to him, even just a little. When I finally came out, they were sitting on the couch. Megan smiled at me. "Eleanor, what a surprise. We did not know you were home." A lie. They knew perfectly well. They just did not care. Ryan did not even look at me. He was checking his phone. And I, again, smiled. I offered them coffee. They said no. They stayed for 10 more minutes and left. And I sat on that old couch. They despised so much, and asked myself, when did I become this? Someone waiting for her own death to stop being a bother. The hours passed slowly after they left. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the city noises, the cars passing, the distant voices, the wind hitting the window. And at some point, between the darkness and the silence, I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to keep waiting. I was not going to keep being invisible. I was not going to give my life to someone who was only waiting for my death. For the first time in 7 years, I felt something like rage. But it was not an explosive rage. It was cold, calculated. It was the rage of someone finally waking up. The next morning, I woke up different. I do not know how to explain it. It was as if something inside me had hardened during the night, as if all those tears I shed had washed away something old and rotten, leaving room for something new, something stronger. I got up. I made my coffee. But this time, I did not sit and look out the window as usual. This time, I took out an old notebook I had stored in a drawer, and I started to write. I wrote down everything I remembered. Every humiliation. Every hurtful word. Every look of contempt. I needed to see it. I needed to understand how blind I had been. And when I finished, I had filled 5 pages. 5 pages of proof that I had not imagined it, that I was not crazy, that they had truly turned me into nothing. But the humiliations did not stop. In fact, they got worse, as if Ryan and Megan sensed I was changing and needed to remind me of my place. 2 weeks after that conversation I overheard, they came to visit again. This time they had news. "Mom," Ryan said without even greeting me, "we need to talk about something important. Megan and I are looking for a house. We want to start a family. But everything is so expensive." I nodded. I said nothing. I just waited. And then Megan spoke, with that sweet, fake voice I hated so much. "Eleanor, we know this apartment is very big for you all alone. 2 bedrooms for 1 person. It's such a waste. Don't you think? You could live in something smaller, more comfortable. And maybe you could sell this place to us. At a fair price, of course. A family price. A family price." Those words sounded nice, but I knew what they meant. They meant they wanted me to gift them my only asset, to hand over the apartment my husband and I worked so hard to pay off for 30 years, just because they wanted to start their lives without making sacrifices, without working hard as we did. I took a deep breath and told them, I'm not ready to sell. This place has too many memories for me. Ryan frowned. Mom, don't be selfish. You're not going to need it for much longer anyway. And at your age, what's the point of holding on to material things? You should be thinking about your son, about your family. Megan nodded, with fake tears in her eyes. It's just that we were really counting on this, Eleanor. We had already made plans. Plans. They had made plans with my life, with my home, without even asking me. And the worst part is they said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if I owed them my existence. I stayed quiet. I did not argue. I just told them I would think about it. And they left satisfied, sure that sooner or later I would give in, because I always gave in. I always ended up giving them what they wanted. But this time, something was different. This time, as I closed the door behind them, I did not feel guilt. I felt determination. I felt clarity. And I knew exactly what I had to do. 3 more weeks passed. 3 weeks where Ryan called me every day. Not to ask how I was. Not to see if I needed anything. Only to pressure me. Mom, have you thought about what we talked about? Mom, we found a perfect house, but we need the down payment money. Mom, don't be difficult. And Megan sent texts. Long messages full of sad face emojis. Eleanor, I understand this is hard for you, but think about the grandchildren you could have. Don't you want your future grandchildren to have a good home? Every message was a blow. Every call was a reminder that, to them, I was just a means to get what they wanted. And the rage kept growing. Cold, silent, powerful. Then came the moment that changed everything for good. It was a Friday. I had gone to the bank for a simple errand, to update my information. Nothing important. But while I was waiting, I overheard 2 women talking. One of them, younger, was saying to the other, my mother-in-law finally sold her house. She bought a small condo and went on a trip with the rest. She says she worked for others her whole life, and now she wants to live for herself. The other woman laughed. How brave. I wouldn't have the courage to do that. My family would kill me. And the first one replied, but it's her money, her life. Why should she have to ask for permission? Those words stayed with me. Why should I have to ask for permission? It was my apartment, my life, my decision. No one had given it to me. No one had paid a single dollar of the mortgage except my husband and me. And yet, I had spent months feeling like I had no right to do what I wanted with my own property. That somehow I owed everything to Ryan just for being my son. But that was not love. That was manipulation. And I had allowed them to manipulate me for far too long. I left the bank with a clear idea. So clear that my own bravery scared me. But I did not stop. I could not stop. It was now or never. That same afternoon, I searched for real estate agencies online. I found one with good reviews. I called. A friendly voice answered. Good morning. How can we help you? And I, with my voice trembling just a little, said, I want to sell my apartment. Quickly, without a big advertising campaign, without many people finding out. The woman on the other end asked a few questions. Address, size, condition. And then she said, we can send someone tomorrow to do an appraisal. Perfect, I replied. And I hung up. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, feeling my heart pound. I had just taken the first step, and there was no turning back. The next day, the agent came. A man in his 40s, gray suit and a professional smile. He walked through the apartment, took pictures, made notes, and at the end, he told me, Mrs. Miller, this place could sell for about $250,000, maybe a bit more if we do some minor repairs. But if you want to sell it fast, as you said, we could get $220,000 in less than a month. I nodded. Let's do it. He looked at me, surprised. You don't want to consult with your family first? Most people. No, I interrupted him. I don't need to consult with anyone. It's my decision. He smiled. He gave me papers to sign. And a week later, there was an interested buyer. A young couple who needed to move quickly for a job. They offered $215,000 in cash. No loans, no complications. I accepted immediately. During all that time, I did not say anything to Ryan. He kept calling, kept pressing. Mom, have you decided? We need an answer. Megan is very anxious. And I would respond evasively. I'm still thinking about it. Son, give me a little more time. And he would grunt in frustration, but he did not push too hard. Because he was sure that in the end, I would give in. Like always. But while he waited, confident, I was signing papers, closing the sale, receiving the money in my account, and looking for a new place for myself. A smaller apartment, 1 bedroom, in a quiet neighborhood. It cost $75,000. I bought it outright. No mortgage, no debts. And the rest of the money, over $130,000, I put in an investment account the bank recommended. The move was quick. I hired a small company. I packed only the essentials. Clothes. Some books. The photos of my husband. The memories that really mattered. The rest, I sold or gave away. I did not need much. I never had. And 3 weeks after making the decision, I was already living in my new apartment. It was small, yes, but it had natural light, a functional kitchen, a clean bathroom. And most importantly, it was completely mine. No one had a key. No one had set foot in that place before me. It was my space, my new beginning. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. But I knew the storm was coming. Ryan still did not know anything, and when he found out, all hell would break loose. So I prepared. I kept all the sales documents in a folder. I printed the bank statements showing where the money was. And most importantly, I had secretly recorded the last few conversations with Ryan and Megan. Those conversations where they talked about the apartment as if it were already theirs. Where they planned what they would do with it when I died. Where Megan complained about having to pretend to like me. I had all the proof. And I was ready. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was arranging the last books on the shelf in my new apartment when the phone rang. It was Ryan. His voice sounded strangely cheerful. Mom. Hi. Good thing you answered. Megan and I want to invite you to dinner this Friday. We haven't spent time together in a while. I was silent for a few seconds. Ryan never invited me to dinner. Never. Of course, son. What time? At 7? We'll pick you up. And don't worry about anything. We're paying for everything. I hung up and knew exactly what was happening. They had decided to change strategies. The direct pressure had not worked. Now came the soft manipulation, the fake gestures of affection, the forced kindness. But I was no longer the same naive woman from before. This time, I knew exactly what to expect. Friday arrived, and I dressed with care. I put on a brown dress I had bought years ago but rarely wore. I did my hair. I put on a little makeup. I wanted to look good, strong. Ryan arrived on time. He rang the doorbell of the old apartment, the one that was no longer mine. I waited a few seconds before going down. When I walked out of the building, I saw him standing by his car, frowning at his phone. Mom, he shouted when he saw me. Why did you take so long? I was about to come up. I had to get ready, I replied calmly. We got in the car. Megan was in the passenger seat. She turned to me with a huge smile. Eleanor, so good to see you. You look very elegant. Her words were honey, but her eyes were ice. We went to an Italian restaurant. It was not fancy, but it was not cheap either. Ryan chose a table in the corner, away from the noise, away from other people, a perfect place for a private conversation. We ordered our food, pasta for Megan, steak for Ryan. I ordered a simple salad. I was not very hungry. My stomach was in a knot, not from fear, but from anticipation. For the first few minutes, they talked about trivial things. Ryan's work, a friend of Megan's who had gotten married, the weather. I just listened, nodded, smiled when necessary, and waited, because I knew that at any moment, the real reason for this dinner would come. And it did, just as they brought the main courses. Ryan wiped his mouth with his napkin and looked at me directly. Mom, we need to talk about something serious. Megan and I have been thinking a lot, and we're worried about you. I looked up. Worried about me? Yes, Megan said, leaning forward. You're all alone in that big apartment. At your age, Anything could happen. A fall, a health problem, and there would be no one there to help you. Ryan nodded. That's why we think it would be better if you moved in with us, or if you sell the apartment and buy something smaller, safer, closer to us. Ah, I said simply, and they waited. They waited for me to respond with gratitude, with relief, with that submissiveness I had always shown. But I just took a sip of water and said, "It's very thoughtful of you to worry about me. I'll think about it." Megan blinked, confused. "But we need an answer soon, Eleanor. Ryan and I already found a house. We just need the down payment. And we thought that if you sell your apartment, you could give us a part of it, as a loan, or as an advance on the inheritance." Her words were so shameless I almost laughed. An advance on the inheritance. As if my death were a scheduled event on their calendar. As if I were just taking up space until they could cash in. "I'll think about it," I repeated with the same calm. And this time Ryan tensed up. "Mom, we've been talking about this for months. You can't keep putting us off." I felt the rage bubbling in my chest, but I did not let it out. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. "Son, it's a big decision. I can't make it that quickly. Give me a little more time." Megan let out a dramatic sigh. "It's just that, Eleanor, we were really counting on that money. We already told the owner of the house that we want it. If we don't make the down payment soon, we're going to lose it. And there's no other option. Our only plan is your apartment." How convenient, I thought. Their only plan was my sacrifice. We finished dinner in an uncomfortable silence. Ryan paid the bill with an annoyed look on his face, and when they dropped me off at my building, Megan gave me a cold hug. "Think about it, Eleanor. We don't want to pressure you. We just want what's best for everyone." The following days were an avalanche of messages. Megan sent me pictures of the house they wanted to buy. "Look, Eleanor, it has 3 bedrooms, a yard, a garage. It would be perfect for when we have kids. Your grandkids could play here." Every message was a hook. Every photo was manipulation. They were trying to make me imagine a future that would never exist. Because I knew the truth. I knew that if I gave them the money, I would never see it again. I knew the grandchildren were just a fantasy to soften me up. I knew that once I had served my purpose, they would discard me as they always had. And I was not going to let them. Not this time. Ryan called too. But his calls were different. Less sweet. More demanding. "Mom, I need an answer, yes or no. It's simple." "It's not simple, son. It's my life. It's my asset. But I'm your son. Your only family. I don't owe you my entire life just because you're my son." There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, dangerous silence. "So you're saying you're not going to help us?" "I'm saying I need time to think." Ryan hung up without saying goodbye. And I stared at the phone, feeling the last thread of love I had for him break completely. Because a son who loves you does not pressure you like that. A son who loves you does not make you feel guilty for wanting to live your own life. A week later, Megan showed up at my building unannounced. She rang the doorbell insistently. "Eleanor, open up, please. We need to talk." I was about to leave for my new apartment. I had left a few things I needed to pick up. I opened the door carefully. Megan's eyes were red. She looked like she had been crying. "Can I come in?" We sat in the empty living room. Most of the furniture was already gone. She looked around, confused, but said nothing. "Eleanor," she began, her voice trembling. "I came to apologize. I know we've been very insistent. I know we've pressured you. But we're just desperate. Ryan and I have been saving for years, and it's never enough. Everything is so expensive. And when we thought about your apartment, we were filled with hope." Hope. What an interesting word to describe greed. Megan continued. "I don't want you to think we only care about the money. We love you, Eleanor. We really do. And we want you to be part of our lives, to live with us, to be the grandmother to our children. But to do that, we need that space. We need that house. And you could make that happen. You could be our salvation." Her words were perfect, rehearsed, but empty. Because if they really loved me, they would not be there asking me to gift them everything. They would be there simply to be with me. "Megan," I finally said, "let me ask you something. If I didn't have this apartment, If I had nothing of value, would you still visit me? She blinked. Of course, Eleanor. What kind of question is that? Then why is it that for the last few months, you've only sought me out to talk about the apartment? Why do you never call just to see how I am? Why does every conversation end with the same request? Megan opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because there was no answer. Or rather, the answer was obvious, and she did not want to admit it. She was silent for a few seconds, and then she stood up. I think I came at a bad time. We'll talk later. And she left, leaving me alone in that empty room. But I did not feel alone. I felt free. Because every conversation, every manipulation, every lie only confirmed that I had made the right decision. That night, sitting in my new apartment, I reviewed all the documents again. The deed to the new place, the sales receipts for the old one, the recordings I had made. Everything was in order. Everything was ready. All that was left was the final moment, the confrontation. And I knew it would come soon. Because Ryan and Megan were not patient, and their desperation would make them make a mistake. A mistake I was waiting for. I took a deep breath. I drank some hot tea. And I mentally prepared myself for what was coming. Because the war was just beginning. And this time, I had all the weapons. The moment came 2 weeks later. I knew it would eventually happen. That Ryan would lose his patience and show up unannounced. That he would seek a confrontation, force me to give him an answer. And that day finally came. It was Saturday morning. I was in my new apartment, drinking coffee by the window, watching life pass by on the street. My phone rang. It was Ryan. Mom, I'm heading to your place. We need to finish this conversation today. You can't keep avoiding us. I'll be there in half an hour. And he hung up before I could reply. I stared at the phone. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was pure adrenaline. I had waited for this moment. I had prepared for it. And now it was here. I got dressed calmly. Comfortable pants, a cream-colored blouse, nothing special. I put my hair up, put on my shoes, and I left for the old apartment. Yes, I still had the keys. The new owner was not moving in until the following week, so technically, I could still get in. I arrived before Ryan. I went up the stairs, I opened the door, and I waited. The apartment was almost empty. Only a few boxes were left in the corners. The echo of my footsteps resonated on the bare walls. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and I waited. 5 minutes later, I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. The door burst open. Ryan entered like a hurricane. Megan was right behind him. Mom, he started to say. But he stopped short when he saw the empty apartment. His face changed from confusion to alarm in a second. What's going on here? Where's the furniture? Where is everything? I stood up slowly. I sold it, I said in a calm voice. You sold the furniture? Megan asked in a high-pitched voice. Not just the furniture, I replied. I sold the apartment too. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan stared at me as if he did not understand the words he had just heard. Megan had turned pale. What did you say? Ryan muttered. I sold the apartment, I repeated, louder this time. 3 weeks ago. The papers are signed. The transfer is done. The new owner moves in next week. Ryan exploded. How could you sell the apartment? I already promised it to my wife. Give me the money from the sale now. His voice was a scream. His hands were shaking. Megan started to cry. But Mom, how could you do this to us? We were counting on this place. We had plans. We had dreams. And you destroyed them. I stood firm. I did not move a muscle. I looked them straight in the eyes. This apartment was mine. It was not yours. It was never yours, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. Ryan took a step toward me. His face was red with rage. Don't you dare say that. I am your son, your only family. That apartment was my inheritance. It was the only thing you were going to leave me. Your inheritance, I repeated calmly. Ryan, you are 38 years old. You have a job, you have your health, you have your life ahead of you, and you were already planning what to do with my things when I died. That's not being a son, that's being a vulture. Megan shouted, offended. How dare you talk to him like that? He gave you everything. He took care of you after your husband died. I let out a bitter laugh. Took care of me? Megan, your husband visited me once a month. He called me only when he needed something. And the two of you spent the last few years treating me like a burden, like something, to be tolerated until it ceased to exist. But Mom, Ryan started, his voice softer now, desperate. My wife and I can't be homeless. We need that money. It's ours by right. By right? I asked, incredulous. What right? The right of being your son. The right of being born. That does not give you a right to my life or to what I decide to do with my own things. Ryan ran his hands through his hair. He was desperate. His perfect plan had crumbled. Then, at least give us the money from the sale. If you already sold it, you have the cash. Give it to us. We can still buy the house. Please, Megan begged. It was the first time in years I had heard her say please. But it was not a genuine please. It was the please of someone who is losing and knows it. Megan approached me. Eleanor, please, think about us. Think about the grandchildren you could have. If we don't have a house, how are we going to start a family? How are we going to give you those grandchildren you want so much? The grandchildren I want so much, I repeated softly. Megan, you never wanted to give me grandchildren. You wanted to use the idea of grandchildren to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty, to force me to hand over everything. She recoiled as if I had slapped her. That's not true. We do want a family. So what happened to the money? Ryan interrupted. Where is it? In my account, I replied. I used part of it to buy myself a new apartment, smaller, more comfortable for me, and the rest is invested, for my old age, for my peace of mind, for me. Ryan looked at me with pure hatred. You're selfish, a selfish old woman who only thinks about herself. And what did you expect me to do? I shouted back. That I would gift you everything and be left with nothing? That I would live on handouts, waiting for you to have the kindness to visit me once a year? Megan was sobbing dramatically. But we wanted you with us. We were going to take care of you. A lie, I said firmly. You didn't want to take care of me. You wanted my money. And when you had it, you would have put me in the cheapest nursing home you could find. Ryan shook his head. You're paranoid. You're making things up. I'm not making anything up, I said. And then I took my phone out of my pocket. I have proof. Proof of what? Megan asked, her voice trembling. Of everything. Of every conversation where you talked about me as if I were already dead. Of every plan you made behind my back. Of every cruel word you said, thinking I couldn't hear you. The color drained from Ryan's face. You recorded us. I recorded you, I confirmed. Because I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining things. I needed proof that you really only saw me as a means to get what you wanted. Ryan took a step toward me, his fists clenched. Give me that phone. Now. No, I replied, backing away. These recordings are my insurance, just in case you decide to do something stupid. Like what? Megan asked. Like try to sue me? Like try to take what's mine? Like claim I'm senile or unfit to make decisions? I've seen enough stories to know how this works. Ryan laughed humorlessly. You're crazy. Completely crazy. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I've finally regained my sanity after years of letting you walk all over me. There was a moment of tense silence. The three of us stared at each other. The air was thick with rage, with pain, with truths that had finally come to light. Then Megan spoke in a cold voice. We will never forgive you for this. Never. I can live with that, I replied. Ryan pointed to the door. Let's go, Megan. There's nothing for us here anymore. She followed him. But before leaving, she turned back to me. I hope that money makes you happy, Eleanor, because it's going to cost you your only family. It already cost me my family a long time ago, I said. I just hadn't realized it until now. They left, slamming the door. The sound echoed in the empty apartment, and I stayed there, standing, alone. But I did not feel alone. I felt victorious. I felt free. For the first time in years, I had defended what was mine. I had said no, and I had survived. I sat on the floor again. My legs were shaking from the adrenaline. My heart was still pounding. But there was something else, something warm in my chest. It was relief. It was peace. It was the feeling of having taken my life back. I took out my phone and looked at the saved recordings. They were my shield, my protection, just in case Ryan tried something legal. Just in case he tried to spin this story another way. But something told me he would not, because he knew he had lost. And losers rarely admit defeat publicly. I stayed there a while longer, silently saying goodbye to this place that had been my home for so many years. But I did not feel sadness. I felt gratitude, because this apartment had given me shelter, and now it had given me freedom. I got up from the floor and walked to the window. From there I could see the street. I saw Ryan and Megan leaving the building. He was walking fast, his fists clenched. She was behind him, wiping her tears dramatically. They got in the car, but they did not start it right away. I saw them arguing inside. Megan was waving her hands wildly. Ryan hit the steering wheel hard. And then, something unexpected happened. The car did not move. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. They were still there. And suddenly I understood. They were coming back. They were not finished. They were going to try one last time. And sure enough, the car door opened. Ryan got out. He looked up, toward the window where I was, and he started walking back to the building. I stepped away from the window. I took a deep breath, and I waited. The footsteps on the stairs sounded heavy, tired. When the door opened, only Ryan came in. Megan had stayed in the car. My son looked different now. The rage was gone from his face. There was something worse. Desperation. "Mom," he said in a hoarse voice, "please, we need to talk calmly." He did not look me in the eye. He just stood in the middle of the empty apartment, his shoulders slumped. "Then let's talk," I said, crossing my arms. He took a deep breath. "Okay, you're right. We were insistent, too pushy. But we really need that money. It's not a whim. It's our only chance to have something of our own, to build a life. And I thought that you, as my mother, would want to help me with that." "As your mother?" I repeated. "Ryan, I helped you my entire life. I gave you everything I could. I paid for your college. I supported you when you changed majors 3 times. I lent you money you never paid back. And now that I finally decide to do something for myself, for my future, I'm selfish." He shook his head. "It's not that. It's just that this money is different. It's a lot. It's enough to change our lives. And you're already old. You've already lived your life. We're just starting." His words hit me like stones. You've already lived your life. As if at 65, I was no longer entitled to anything. As if I should just sit and wait for death while they enjoyed what I had built. "Ryan," I said in a firm voice, "I am 65 years old, not 80, not 90. I could still live another 20 or 30 years, and I am not going to spend them depending on anyone. I am not going to be left with nothing just so you can have everything." "But that money belongs to me," he yelled. "It's my inheritance." "No," I replied, raising my voice too. "An inheritance is what I leave you when I die, not what you take while I'm alive." He ran his hands over his face. He was on the verge of collapse. "Then at least give me half. $50,000. We could make a down payment with that. I'm not asking for all of it, just a part, and we'll pay you back, I swear." I laughed humorlessly. "Pay me back? With what? You already owe me $15,000 from previous loans you never paid back." Ryan fell silent, because he knew it was true. Over the years, he had come to me for money dozens of times. For the car, for the wedding, for a class, for emergencies that were never really emergencies. And he always promised to pay it back. But he never did, and I never insisted, because he was my son, and a mother does not charge her son. Or so I thought. But now I saw the truth. It was not generosity, it was weakness. It was allowing myself to be used over and over. "Ryan," I said, calmer, "I am not giving you the money. Not all of it, and not part of it. That money is for me, for my peace of mind. To know that if I get sick, if I need help, if something happens, I have the means to take care of it. Because clearly, I cannot count on you." "That's not fair," he said, his voice breaking. "I would be there if you needed me. I really would. Just like you've been there these past 7 years? I asked sarcastically. Visiting me once a month? Calling me only when you needed something? Treating me like an old piece of furniture that was in your way? He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Because there was no defense. There was no excuse. And we both knew it. Mom, he finally whispered, please, just this once, I'm begging you, give me the money. Seeing my son beg should have softened me. I should have felt pity, but I felt nothing, because his pleas were not out of love. They were out of desperation, out of greed, out of fear of losing what was never his. No, I said with finality. And now I need you to leave. I have things to do. He looked at me in disbelief. You're kicking me out. I am asking you to respect my decision and leave, I replied. Ryan took a step toward me. His face changed again. The desperation turned into something darker. A threat. You know what, Mom? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not my responsibility anymore. So, when you're old, when you're sick, when you need help, don't come looking for me. Because I won't be there for you either. His words were meant to hurt me, meant to make me afraid. But they only confirmed what I already knew, that he had never been there for me, and he never would be. I can live with that, I said calmly. But wait, I said, as he was about to leave. There is something else you need to know. A second piece of news. Ryan stopped. He turned around slowly. What else could there be? He asked, weary. I took out my phone. I swiped the screen until I found what I was looking for, and I showed it to him. He squinted, trying to see. It was a document, a legal document. What is that? He asked, moving closer. It's my will, I replied. I updated it last week. Ryan grabbed the phone from my hands and started to read. I watched his face change, watched the confusion turn to shock, watched the shock turn to horror. This can't be real, he muttered. It's completely real, I confirmed. Signed before a notary. Completely legal. The will specified that the new apartment I bought, plus all the money I had left, would be donated to a charity for abandoned seniors when I died. Ryan would receive nothing. Absolutely nothing. You're disinheriting me, he said, his voice trembling. I'm teaching you a lesson, I replied. The lesson that family isn't about waiting for inheritances. It's about love, about respect, about being present. And you did none of that. He started to shake. His whole body was shaking. His hands, his legs. Even his voice trembled when he spoke. But Mom, my wife and I can't be homeless. You don't have jobs? You don't have savings? You don't have incomes? Of course we do, I said. You have all of that. You just don't have my money. And that is your real desperation. Ryan dropped the phone. He put his hands to his head. And for the first time in this whole situation, I saw him truly broken. It was not an act. It was not manipulation. It was the genuine collapse of someone who has just lost everything he expected to get without effort. How could you do this to me? He whispered. How could I? I repeated. Ryan, I didn't do anything to you. You did this to yourself. You spent years treating me like an ATM, like something that was only useful when you needed money. You never asked how I was. You were never interested in my life. You never saw me as a person, only as a resource. And now that the resource has dried up, you fall apart because you never learned to stand on your own 2 feet, because you always expected me to solve your life for you. He slid to the floor, sitting with his back against the wall, just as I had been a few minutes ago, but our postures meant opposite things. I had been in a position of power. He was in a position of defeat. You're going to regret this, he said, not looking at me. Someday you'll be alone, sick, scared, and you'll regret this. Maybe, I replied, or maybe I'll find peace knowing I lived my last years with dignity, that I didn't let myself be used, that I reclaimed my worth. He let out a bitter laugh. Your worth. What worth do you have if nobody loves you? If your only son hates you? I'd rather you hate me for defending myself, I said, than love me only for what you can get from me. Ryan stood up slowly. He looked at me one last time. And in his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Total surrender. I hope you're happy with your decision, he said, dragging his words. I hope that money keeps you warm at night when you're completely alone. I was already alone, Ryan. You were just taking up space. He walked out without closing the door. I heard him go down the stairs. I heard the car start, and I heard it drive away. The silence that remained was absolute. I sat on the floor again. My legs would not support me. My whole body was shaking from the released tension, but I did not cry. I did not feel sadness. I felt something strange, something I had not felt in years. I felt complete, as if a part of me that had been asleep had finally woken up, as if I had recovered something I thought I had lost forever. My dignity. I stayed in that empty apartment for almost an hour, sitting on the floor, staring at the bare walls, processing everything that had just happened. I had no regrets. Not for a single second did I doubt my decision, but there was something in the air, a feeling of finality, of closure. This place had been my home for 30 years. I had cooked thousands of meals here. I had mourned my husband's death here. I had grown old in loneliness here. And now, here, I had reclaimed my freedom. I stood up slowly. I walked through each empty room. I touched the walls with my fingertips. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." And I walked out, closing the door behind me for the last time. When I got to my new apartment, the contrast was absolute. The windows let in natural light. The space was small but cozy. Everything smelled new, of possibilities, of beginnings. I made myself some tea. I sat by the window, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled genuinely. Not a forced smile, not a polite smile, but a smile of real satisfaction. I had done something for myself. I had chosen my well-being over the manipulation of others, and that felt powerful. The phone rang, interrupting my moment of peace. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but I finally did. "Hello?" On the other end was a female voice I did not recognize. "Mrs. Miller? This is Rachel, Megan's sister. I need to talk to you." My stomach tightened. Rachel. Megan had told her sister everything, and now came round two, the attempt to make me feel guilty through someone else. "Go ahead," I replied in a neutral voice. "Mrs. Miller, Megan told me what happened, and I want you to know that I am very disappointed in you. How could you do that to your own son? He needed you, and you turned your back on him." I took a deep breath. "Rachel, with all due respect, you don't know the whole story. You only know the version your sister told you, the version where I'm the villain. But there's much more to it." She snorted. "What more could there be? You sold the apartment your son needed. That's all I need to know." "My son didn't need that apartment," I replied firmly. "My son wanted that apartment. There's a huge difference." Rachel kept talking. Her voice was harsh, accusatory. "Megan is devastated. Ryan is devastated. You destroyed their dreams, their future plans. And for what? To buy yourself a smaller apartment and hoard money you won't even live to spend? That is pure selfishness." I listened to her words without interrupting. I let her say everything she had to say, and when she finally fell silent, waiting for my response, I spoke with a calm that surprised even me. "Rachel, I understand you want to defend your sister. It's natural, but let me ask you something. When was the last time Ryan and Megan visited me without asking for something? When was the last time they called just to see how I was? When was the last time they treated me like a person and not like a bank?" There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end. "They have their lives," Rachel finally said, with less conviction. "Their jobs, their responsibilities." "Exactly," I replied. "They have their lives, and I have mine. And my life does not consist of sacrificing myself eternally so they can live comfortably." Rachel tried to argue more. "But Mrs. Miller, you're the mom. Parents should always help their children. They should always be there." "I was there for 38 years, I said, raising my voice slightly. "I gave my son everything I could, but there comes a time when children must stand on their own. And if at 38, Ryan is still expecting me to solve his life, then I failed as a mother. But I am not going to continue failing by allowing him to use me." Rachel hung up without saying goodbye, and I stared at the phone. I knew it would not be the last call. That Megan and Ryan would try to use other people to pressure me, to make me feel guilty, to break me. But I had already made my decision, and no one was going to make me change my mind. That night, before sleeping, I checked my bank account online. There was the money. Over $130,000. It was more money than I had ever had at one time in my entire life. And it was all mine. No one could take it from me. No one could demand it. It was my safety net. My freedom materialized in numbers on a screen. I slept peacefully that night. No nightmares. No anxiety. Just peace. The following days were strangely normal. I focused on setting up my new apartment. I bought plants for the windows. I hung light beige curtains. I organized my books on the small bookshelf. Everything I did reminded me that this space was mine, that no one would come to judge it, that no one would come to tell me I should change this or that. It was my refuge, my kingdom. A week later, I received a text message from Ryan. It was long, full of carefully chosen words. "Mom," it began, "I've had time to think, and I think we both said hurtful things. I know I've failed you as a son. I know I haven't been present as I should have. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. You're my mother, and you always will be. I'd like to talk, so we can fix this." I read the message 3 times, searching for sincerity between the lines, but I did not find it, because at no point did it say, "I'm sorry." At no point did it acknowledge the real damage he had done. It was just a generic apology, one more attempt to get closer to see if he could get something. I did not reply. I simply put the phone away and went on with my day. 2 days later, another message arrived. This one was from Megan. "Eleanor, please don't close the door on us. I know we made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance. Ryan is in a very bad way. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. He keeps thinking about how to fix things with you. Please, give him that chance." I did not reply to that one either, because I knew it was theater. Emotional manipulation, a last-ditch attempt to soften me. One afternoon, while I was sitting in a park near my new apartment, I saw an older woman sitting on a bench. She was alone, feeding pigeons with breadcrumbs. I walked over and sat next to her. "It's a beautiful day," I said. She smiled. "Beautiful," she confirmed. "I come here every day. It's my moment of peace." I asked her if she had family. She nodded. 3 children, 8 grandchildren. But I barely see them. They're busy with their lives. And I understand. I don't want to be a burden. Her words reminded me of myself a few months ago. "You are not a burden," I told her. "You are a person, and you deserve to be treated as one." She looked at me, surprised, and then she smiled, with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." We talked for almost an hour. She told me her life story, her struggles, her disappointments, and I told her mine. I told her about Ryan, about Megan, about the apartment, about my decision, and she listened without judgment. When I finished, she took my hand. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I wish I'd had your courage, but I'm afraid. Afraid of being left completely alone." "Being alone is not the worst thing that can happen," I told her. "The worst thing is being surrounded by people who make you feel alone." She nodded slowly, as if those words had touched something deep inside her. We said goodbye with a hug, and as I walked back home, I felt something new. Connection, empathy, purpose. I had spent so much time focused on my broken relationship with Ryan that I had forgotten there were other people in the world, other stories, other solitudes I could accompany. That night, I made a decision. I would look for activity groups for seniors, classes, workshops, whatever. I needed to build a new life, a life that did not revolve around my son. I went online and started searching. I found a painting workshop given on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I had never painted in my life, but something in the description caught my eye. Expression without judgment, creativity without pressure, community without commitment. I signed up before I could change my mind. The first workshop was in 3 days, and although I was nervous, I also felt excited. An excitement I had not felt in years. The excitement of starting something new, of discovering a part of myself I had never explored. Meanwhile, the messages from Ryan and Megan continued to arrive, more desperate each time, more manipulative. "Mom, please, you can't ignore us forever. We're your family." "Eleanor, Ryan is considering therapy. He really wants to change. He just needs your support." "Mom, at least answer so we know you're okay. We're worried." Every message was an attempt to reopen the door I had closed. But I was no longer the same woman who could be convinced with pretty words. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had finally learned that saying no does not make you a bad person. It makes you a person with boundaries. And boundaries are not walls, they are doors. Doors that you decide when to open and when to keep closed. On Sunday, I received one last call. This time, it was from a number I recognized. It was Emily, a distant cousin I had not seen in years. "Eleanor," she said in a serious voice, "Ryan called me. He told me what happened, and I want to tell you that I understand your position. But I also want to ask you to consider forgiveness. Family is the most important thing, and grudges only hurt you." I listened to her words. I took a deep breath, and I replied, "Emily, it's not a grudge. It's a decision. The decision not to allow them to keep hurting me. And if family is so important, why didn't Ryan show it when he could? Why does he only remember family when he needs something?" She did not know what to say, and I took advantage of the silence. "I appreciate your call, Emily. But this decision is already made," and I hung up. Tuesday came faster than I expected. It was the day of my first painting class. I woke up early. I had a calm breakfast. I got dressed in comfortable clothes, gray pants, a soft ivory-colored blouse. Nothing special, but I felt good. When I arrived at the place, it was a small, light-filled room. There were 6 other people, all women, all over 50. The teacher's name was Rose. She had white hair pulled back in a messy bun and a warm smile that made you feel immediately welcome. "Good morning," she said in a soft voice. "Today, we are not going to worry about making something perfect. We are just going to let our hands express what we feel." And so my new life began. At first, I felt clumsy. The brush trembled in my hand, the colors mixed in strange ways on the canvas. But Rose walked between the tables, saying beautiful things. There are no mistakes in art, only discoveries. After an hour, something inside me relaxed. I stopped thinking. I stopped judging every stroke. And I just painted. I do not know what I was creating. It was abstract, chaotic, but it was mine. And when the class ended, I felt lighter, as if I had let out something I had been holding in for years. The other women also shared their work. Each one had a story. Each one had her battles. And no one judged anyone. It was a safe space. A space where I could just be Eleanor. Not someone's mother, not someone's widow, just me. After class, one of the women approached me. Her name was Alice. She had short, curly hair and a contagious laugh. "It's your first time, isn't it?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "You can tell. But in a good way. It looks like you have a lot to get out." We laughed together. She invited me to get coffee. We went to a nearby coffee shop. And as we drank our hot cups, Alice told me her story. She had been married for 40 years. Her husband died 3 years ago, and her children lived in other cities. They visited once a year, if she was lucky. "At first, I got really depressed," she told me. "I felt like my life was over. But one day I decided that if no one was going to live my life for me, then I would have to do it. And here I am, painting, dancing, living." Her words resonated deeply with me. It was exactly what I was doing, reclaiming my life. Alice became my first real friend in years. We started getting together after every class. Sometimes we would walk in the park, and we always talked. About everything. About nothing. No filters. No judgments. It was liberating to have someone who understood what it meant to reinvent yourself at this age. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of peace. Of new routines. Of days filled with small joys. But of course, the peace could not last forever. One Friday afternoon, someone knocked on the door of my apartment. I was not expecting visitors. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped for a second. It was Megan. I opened the door just a crack. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not inviting her in. Megan looked different. Thinner. More tired. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. "Eleanor, please. I just want to talk. 5 minutes, that's all." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face. But another part was curious. What could she want now? I opened the door fully but stayed in the doorway. "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. Megan took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. For real, Ryan doesn't know I'm here. He's angry. He says he'll never forgive you. But I can't live like this. I can't live with this tension. With this grudge. I need you to know that I'm sorry. That I understand why you did what you did." Her speech was prepared. "You're sorry," I repeated. "Or you're sorry you lost access to the money." Megan looked down. "I know you think we only cared about the money. And, maybe at first, we did. But we weren't bad people, Eleanor. We were just desperate. Scared of the future. And we saw your apartment as the solution to all our problems. But that didn't give us the right to treat you the way we did." At least she was admitting something. That was more than Ryan had done. "I appreciate your apology, Megan, but it doesn't change anything." She looked up quickly. "But we could start over. We could build a real relationship, without interests, without pressure, just as family." I sighed. "I wish I could believe you, but building trust again takes time. And honestly, I don't know if I have that time or that energy." Megan nodded slowly. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that not all of us are like Ryan, that I am sorry, and that if you ever decide to give us another chance, I'll be here." She turned to leave, but before she went down the stairs, I turned to her. "Megan." She stopped. "If you really want to show me you've changed, don't do it with words. Do it with actions. And not toward me. Do it for yourself. Build your life without depending on inheritances, without expecting others to solve your problems. That's the only way I could ever see you as someone truly different." She nodded, and she left. I do not know if she would really change. Probably not. But at least she had tried something Ryan never did. Acknowledge her mistake. That night, I sat and thought about everything that had happened in the last month. I had sold my apartment. I had confronted my son. I had set boundaries. I had started painting. I had made a friend. I had reclaimed my dignity. And although there were still moments of doubt, of sadness, of wondering if I had done the right thing, deep down, I knew the answer. I had done exactly what I needed to do. I had saved myself. Because no one else was going to. The following days continued peacefully. The painting classes became my favorite time of the week. Rose taught us different techniques: watercolor, oil, acrylic, and each time I felt freer, more myself. One afternoon, while I was painting, Rose came over to my table. "Eleanor," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you noticed how your painting has changed since you started?" I looked at her, confused. "How so?" "At first, you painted with small strokes, fearful, controlled. But now, your strokes are broad, confident, free. That speaks to an internal change, a liberation." I felt a lump in my throat. Because she was right. I had changed, and that change was reflected even in things I had not noticed. "I went through something difficult recently," I told her. "I had to make decisions that hurt, but they were necessary." Rose smiled. "The best decisions always hurt at first, but then they give you wings." Those words stayed with me. They give you wings. Yes, that was exactly how I felt. As if after years of being tied down, I could finally fly. Alice and I started planning a short trip, just a weekend, to a nearby city, to see museums, to walk without a destination, to enjoy life without asking permission. It was something small, but it meant everything. It meant I could make plans, that my life was not over, that there were still adventures to be lived. When I told Alice about my situation with Ryan, she did not judge me. She just hugged me and said, "Children don't understand that parents have a right to live, too. They think we were born just to serve them. But you taught them something important. You taught them boundaries." 3 months had passed since the confrontation. 3 months of tranquility, of new routines, of painting, of friendship with Alice, of afternoons in the park, of nights reading on my small but comfortable couch. My life had found a rhythm that made me happy. It was not an explosive happiness, it was a quiet happiness, deep, real. But as it often happens, just when you get used to the peace, the past comes knocking on your door again. It was a Saturday morning. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and this time, it was not Megan. It was Ryan. Alone. Without his wife. He looked different. Thinner. With an unkempt beard. With dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. I hesitated before opening, but something in his posture made me do it. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, blocking the entrance. "What do you want, Ryan?" He held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just want to talk. No yelling, no demands. Just talk. Please." There was something in his voice that sounded different. More broken. More real. I let him in. We sat in the small living room. He looked around with a strange expression. "This is your new place?" he asked. "Yes. It's nice. Small, but enough for me." He nodded silently. There was a long, awkward silence, and then he spoke. "Mom, I came to tell you that you were right. About everything." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Ryan never admitted his mistakes. "Go on," I said. He ran his hands over his face. "The last 3 months have been the worst of my life. Megan and I almost separated. We lost the house we wanted. I had problems at work from being so distracted. And all because I couldn't accept that I had lost something that was never mine." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "I went to therapy," he continued. "The therapist made me see things I didn't want to accept. He made me see that I had treated you like a resource, like something I could use when I needed it. I never saw you as a person with your own needs, with a right to your own life. And that's unforgivable." I felt something move in my chest. It was not relief. Not yet. But it was something. "I'm glad you're going to therapy," I said carefully. "That's a good step." Ryan looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "I didn't come to ask you for money. I didn't come to ask you to change your will. I came just to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry, and that I understand if you can never forgive me." His words sounded sincere. For the first time in years, they sounded genuine, but I had learned to be cautious. "I appreciate your apology, Ryan, but apologies don't erase years of mistreatment. They don't erase the pain you caused me." He nodded. "I know, and I don't expect them to. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did, and that I'm trying to be better. Not for you, not even for Megan, but for myself, because I don't like the person I had become." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, and then I asked him something I had wanted to know for a long time. "Ryan, why did you never visit me? Why did it always seem like an obligation to spend time with me?" He took a deep breath. "Because you reminded me of Dad, and his death hurt me so much that I preferred to stay away from everything that reminded me of him, including you. I know it sounds horrible. I know it's selfish, but it's the truth." His words hit me hard, because I finally had an answer. It was not a good answer, but at least it was honest. "I miss your father too," I said softly. "Every day." But pushing me away didn't make the pain any less. It just made me feel more alone. He nodded, tears rolling down his face. "I wish I could go back in time," he said in a broken voice. "Do things differently, but I can't. The only thing I can do is try to be better from here on out. If you ever decide to give me another chance, I promise it will be different. But if not, I understand that too." I looked at my son crying in front of me, and I felt something complex. It was not total forgiveness, not yet, but it was not hatred either. It was something in between. It was an acknowledgement of his humanity, his flaws, his capacity for change. I need time, I told him finally. A lot of time. I can't just forget everything and trust you again. But I appreciate that you came, that you were honest. That's more than I expected. He got up to leave. Before opening the door, he turned. Can I call you? Every once in a while? Just to see how you are, without asking for anything. I thought for a moment. You can. But if you ever try to manipulate me again, if you ever treat me like you did before, there will be no more chances. He nodded. I understand. And he left. When I closed the door, I stood there for a long time, processing, feeling. I did not know if Ryan would really change, if this time was different, but at least he had taken the first step. He had acknowledged his mistake, and that was more than Megan had done, more than anyone had done. That afternoon, I went to my painting class. Rose noticed something different in me. Did something happen? She asked. Yes, I replied. My son came to apologize, and I don't know how to feel about it. She smiled with understanding. You don't have to know how to feel. Feelings are complex. They can coexist. You can be hurt and hopeful at the same time. I painted that day with a different intensity. I used dark colors mixed with bright ones, representing exactly what I felt. The darkness of the past mixed with the light of a possible future. When I finished, Alice came over to see my work. It's beautiful, she said, and sad, and hopeful, all at the same time. Exactly, I replied. That's how I feel. That night, alone in my apartment, I thought a lot about forgiveness, about whether it was weak to forgive someone who had hurt you so much, or if it was strong, and I came to a conclusion. Forgiveness was not for Ryan. Forgiveness was for me, to release the weight I had been carrying, to be able to move forward without resentment poisoning my soul. But forgiving did not mean forgetting. It did not mean allowing him to hurt me again. It meant letting go and moving on. The following days were lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted from my shoulders. Ryan called me twice that week. Short conversations, simple, asking how I was. Briefly telling me about his day, not asking for anything, not manipulating. And although I still kept my guard up, I began to feel that maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Alice and I finally took our trip. We went to a coastal city. We walked on the beach. We visited art galleries. We ate seafood in little restaurants. And I laughed. I really laughed. With my whole body. With my whole soul. I laughed in a way I had not laughed in years. And in one of those moments, walking along the shore with my feet in the cold water, Alice told me something I will never forget. Eleanor, she said, taking my hand. I'm proud of you, of how you stood up for yourself, of how you took your life back. You are braver than you think. Her words filled me with an emotion that was hard to describe, because for so long I had felt weak, cowardly, invisible. But now someone saw me as brave. And maybe she was right. Maybe I had been brave all this time without realizing it. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. And I had done exactly that. That night, lying in the hotel room, staring at the ceiling, I felt something I had not felt in years. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for my life, for my decisions, for my freedom, for everything I had lived through and survived. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened with Ryan, whether our relationship was repaired or not, I would be okay, because I finally had myself. 6 months had passed since that day of the confrontation. Half a year of learning to live again, of discovering who I was without the chains of guilt, without the weight of others' expectations. It was a Sunday morning. The sun came through my window, illuminating the plants that now filled every corner of my small apartment. I got up without rushing. I made my coffee, and I sat by the window as I did every morning. But this time, there was something different in the air, a feeling of fullness, of complete closure. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Alice. Ready for the exhibition today? I smiled. Today was a special day. Rose had organized a small exhibition of her students' work, and I had decided to participate. I dressed with care, an olive green dress I had bought the week before. I did my hair. I put on light makeup. and I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the one 6 months ago. There was something in her eyes. Strength, peace, recovered dignity. I arrived at the art studio an hour early. My 3 paintings were already hanging on the wall. The first was dark, full of grays and blacks. It represented my life before. The second was chaotic, bright colors mixed with shadows. It represented the conflict, the awakening. And the third was luminous, full of yellows and oranges. It represented my present, my freedom. Rose came over with a huge smile. "Eleanor, your works tell a complete story. It's beautiful to see your evolution." People started to arrive. Other students, family, friends. Alice arrived with a bouquet of flowers for me. "I'm so proud of you," she said, hugging me tight. We walked among the artworks. Each one told a different story. Each woman had put her battles onto those canvases, and there was something powerful in that, in seeing how pain could be transformed into beauty, in seeing how creativity healed us. I was explaining the meaning of my second painting to a woman when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Mom." I turned around slowly. Ryan was standing in the doorway, alone, with a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hands. He looked nervous, insecure, as if he did not know if he was welcome. I walked toward him with measured steps. "What are you doing here?" I asked, without hostility, but with caution. "You told me you had this exhibition," he replied, "and I wanted to come. I wanted to see what you've been doing, if you'll let me." I looked into his eyes, searching for ulterior motives. But I only saw genuine curiosity. "It's fine, you can stay." His face lit up with relief. We walked together to my paintings. He observed them in silence for a long time, and then he spoke in a soft voice. "This first one is how you felt before, isn't it?" I nodded. "And this third one is how you feel now." I nodded again. He pointed to the middle one, the chaotic one. "And this is me. I'm the chaos that interrupted your darkness, but also the one that pushed you toward the light." His words surprised me with their depth. "I hadn't thought of it that way," I admitted. "But you're right." Ryan turned to me. "Mom, I've thought a lot these past few months. I've worked on myself, and I realized something. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me something I never had. You gave me an example of what it means to stand up for yourself, of what it means to live with dignity. And even though it hurt at the time, now I understand." I felt a lump in my throat. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "I just wanted you to know. And I wanted to give you this." He handed me the flowers. "They're not much, but I picked them out myself. Without Megan's help, without consulting anyone, just thinking of you." I took the flowers with trembling hands. They were simple but beautiful. "Thank you," I whispered. Ryan stayed at the exhibition for 2 hours. He talked with Alice, with Rose, with other students. And for the first time, I saw him genuinely interested in my life, in what I had built. Before he left, he hugged me. It was a different hug, not the mechanical hug from before. It was a real hug, with feeling. "I'm proud of you, Mom. And I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you." When he left, Alice came over. "That's your son?" I nodded. "He's changing, or at least he's trying." She smiled. "Sometimes people need to lose something to value it. Maybe your courage taught him something important." "Maybe," I replied. "Only time will tell. But it's not my responsibility to fix him anymore. That's his own battle. And I have mine. My battle is to keep growing, to keep living." The exhibition ended at sunset. Rose gathered us all and gave a short speech. "Each of you came here with your wounds, with your stories, with your fears. But look at what you created. Beauty from pain, strength from vulnerability, and community from loneliness. I am honored to have been part of your journeys." We all applauded, with tears in our eyes. That night, back in my apartment, I put Ryan's flowers in a vase. I placed them by the window where the morning sun would light them up, and I sat and thought about the entire journey. I had lost the relationship I had with my son, but I had gained something more valuable. I had gained myself. I had recovered my voice, my power, my right to exist not just for others but for me. I did not know what would happen with Ryan, if he had really changed or if it was just a temporary attempt, but it did not matter as much anymore, because my happiness no longer depended on him. It no longer depended on anyone but me, and that was liberating. A week later, I received a letter. It was from Megan. I opened it with curiosity. "Eleanor," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to reply. I just want you to know that Ryan and I separated. Not because of you, but because we both finally realized we had built a relationship on the wrong foundations, on expectations, on dependency. Now we are both working on ourselves. And maybe someday, if fate wills it, we can be better people. Thank you for teaching me that saying no is also an act of love. Self-love." I folded the letter slowly. I did not feel joy at their separation, but I did not feel sadness either. I felt neutral. I felt that everyone was finding their own path, and that was okay. The following months continued at their quiet pace. Ryan called me once a week. Simple conversations. No demands, no manipulations. Just genuine questions about my life. And I shared. I told him about my paintings, about Alice, about the books I was reading, and he listened. He really listened. I do not know if our relationship would ever be like it was before, but honestly, I did not want it to be. I wanted something new, something healthier, something built on mutual respect and not on obligation. A year after the confrontation, I was sitting in the same park where I had met that woman feeding pigeons, and I saw her again, sitting on the same bench. I approached with a smile. "Do you remember me?" She looked up, and her eyes lit up. "The brave woman. Of course, I remember you." We sat together. I told her everything that had happened. She listened attentively, and when I finished, she took my hand. "You did more than save yourself. You saved me, too." After our conversation, I took your advice. I set boundaries with my children. And you know what? Some got angry, but others understood. And now I have a more honest relationship with them. Thank you. Her words filled me with a deep emotion. Because I had made a difference. Not just in my life, but in someone else's. That night, before sleeping, I wrote in a journal I had started to keep. Today marks 1 year since I made the hardest decision of my life. 1 year since I chose my dignity over the approval of others. And I can say with total honesty that I do not regret it. I learned that love is not constant sacrifice. That family is not blind obligation. That forgiveness is not forgetting. And that old age is not the end. It is just another stage. A stage where I can finally be who I was always meant to be. I belong to no one now. I am just myself. And that is more than enough. It is everything. I closed the journal. I turned off the light. And I fell asleep with a smile. The smile of a free woman.